Today we're going to talk about Trump dissembling at the worst time and how his campaign is trying to pick up the slack. And I interview the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate in Missouri, Lucas Kunce, about Josh Hawley's most recent scandal with a private jet and what it would mean for Missouri if the Democrats' 50th vote was from a red state. And I'm joined by Will Rollins, the Democratic nominee for California's 41st Congressional District, one of the most flippable seats in the country, to discuss Trump's recent threats against California and Coachella, whether Trump promoting the Republican in that race was personal given Will's work prosecuting the January 6th insurrectionists, and the state of his race right now. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So look, a lot of us have been beating the drum about Trump's cognitive state for a long time. Let's not forget that a year ago, Trump was already claiming that Obama was still president, that World War II hadn't happened yet, that Jeb Bush got us involved in the Middle East, was going off on tangents about toilets flushing and windmills killing birds. So I've been covering this for a minute now. And of course, the mainstream media was busy giving Trump a pass to focus on Biden. But now, even the New York Times is publishing articles about Trump's cognitive decline. And when the Times is acknowledging Donald Trump's mental state, then the whole world can see Donald Trump's mental state. Like, for that outlet to begrudgingly have to acknowledge the objective reality that Trump's brain is rotting in real time is an indication that he's really jumped the shark here. And so now his campaign is realizing that the problem is that people are actually listening to Donald Trump speak. So they've begun canceling his appearances. He's, of course, bailed on a second debate with Kamala, bailed on a 60 Minutes interview, a CNBC Squawk Box interview, an NBC interview, a Politico interview, an interview with the Shade Room, and even an NRA rally. What does it say when a Republican doing a rally with the NRA is too risky? And so the point here is clear. Trump's campaign obviously recognizes what a liability it is when he's able to just speak extemporaneously. And now that we're in October and just 2 weeks out from the election and everyone's paying attention and are tuned in, they are doing everything they can to keep him out of the spotlight. Trump's campaign is realizing that its biggest liability at this point is the candidate himself. I mean, honestly, think about the last few appearances he did do. A rally where he spent 39 minutes on stage swaying to music. Another rally where he spent 16 minutes wandering around the stage because his mic cut out and he had no ability to improvise. And just this weekend, where Trump went on a 10-minute rant about the late golfer Arnold Palmer, which culminated into this gem of a moment right here.
This is a guy that was all man. This man was strong and tough. And I refuse to say it, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, "Oh my God, that's unbelievable." I had to say it.
Yup, that is Donald Trump speaking longingly about Arnold Palmer's anatomy. That's the closing message he's going with. 2 weeks out. Let's get on stage and talk about a dead guy's wiener. And look, that unto itself is pretty telling, because when you are so undisciplined that you can't control yourself for the final 2 weeks of the campaign, imagine what it'll look like if Trump wins the presidency and is completely unburdened by the prospect of another election. Like, his danger aside, this guy's brain is cooked, and he's putting it on full display on a daily basis at this point. But here's the deal. Trump's fans won't see this stuff because it clearly doesn't pierce the hermetically sealed bubble that right-wing media operates in. And the few people, by the way, who do see it won't care because part of being in a cult is slavish devotion to the cult leader. And I say that to caution you against thinking that this is just all some silver bullet against Trump. We cannot expect that because we know that he's on stage swaying to music and wandering around his rallies and talking about dead golfers' genitals and canceling any interviews where he might just face a critical question, that everybody knows it. meaning the onus is on us individually to make the case to our circles of people. I've said it before, no one is going to save us, not the courts or prosecutors or the Democratic Party. It is on us alone to make the case to our circles of people, our friends, our families, our coworkers. So that's going to be the whole ballgame from here on out. If you're looking for one thing you can do, it is to find somebody who wasn't going to vote, and this week to make them your responsibility. Next up are previews of my interviews with Lucas Kuntz and Will Rollins. One of the justifications for Trump to hold a rally in Coachella is that Republicans are clearly worried about losing Ken Calvert's seat, and that's your opponent. Assuming that's why he came, which, again, it may very well be that he is having a lot of trouble putting butts in seats in these swing districts, and so he wants, some fresh people out in California that he's decided to do in the middle of his campaign, where really the battleground states are the whole ballgame for him. Assuming still that's why he came, what does it say about the state of your race with Ken Calvert?
I mean, they know he's going to lose. They're doing everything they can to try to save him. And it wasn't just Trump who came to Coachella on Saturday. It was also Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, who came and did a rally for him in Corona or Norco yesterday, on the other side of the district. So they know Calvert is in real trouble. And it's because we're able to appeal to a lot of independents, a lot of moderate Republicans who don't want to live in a world where whether the firefighters in our district get disaster aid depends on who's president of the United States. It's just un-American. And they're looking for reasonable, sane leadership. And Ken Calvert is just going to bend over backwards to do whatever Donald Trump tells him to do. It's why he voted to overturn the last election, voted against the January 6th committee, called for dropping charges against people who assaulted the U.S. Capitol. And it just cuts through party lines when you have a member of Congress who won't stand up to folks who assaulted cops at the U.S. Capitol.
You've actually prosecuted insurrectionists who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Do you think that might have been why Trump would travel to one of the bluest states in the country in the final stretch of this campaign? Do you think that it was personal to him?
I do. I think he believes that folks who were loyal to him, that's how he operates, right? It's entirely about personal loyalty. And it's what we've seen time and time again with him, whether it's going back to Jim Comey and the private conversation they had at the dinner where he asked for loyalty from him, or people like Ken Calvert in the House of Representatives, where he demanded it and Calvert provided it. And he wants to send a signal to people in government right now that if you are loyal to him, if you vote to overturn the election for him, he'll have your back. And the bad news for these guys is that districts like mine, it's going to backfire because Southern Californians don't want this kind of weird, extreme bullshit in our state. And look at Calvert. It's like you got to win the middle to hold a purple seat. And instead, he's running all the way to the right, the same guy who voted against the largest bipartisan infrastructure bill in U.S. history, and instead brings Mike Johnson, the co-sponsor of a national abortion ban, to Southern California. I can tell you there are Republican women in my district who have come up to me and said, thank you for running against this guy. I believe in small government. I don't believe the government should be in our doctor's offices, our bedrooms. And I want you to beat Ken Calvert so that you can protect our fundamental freedom to our own bodies.
Yeah, it's wild how just a few years after Republicans campaigned that the ACA would usher in death panels, that now Republicans are running a campaign predicated on sticking politicians in between a woman and her doctor in the doctor's office. So, Lucas, we've got some big news here regarding Josh Hawley. So I want to draw your attention first to a tweet that he posted in 2018. Claire McCaskill's definition of being the hardest working Democrat in the party, skipping out on her luxury RV to fly in her luxury jet. It must be good to be rich and liberal. Which brings us to today. So what did his latest FEC filing show?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that he's rich and an a-hole, right? Like a complete hypocrite. I mean, the guy's, he doesn't have a campaign event here for 55 days. He comes into the state and zips around on a Gulfstream 4 fancy luxury jet with Harrison Butker on a bromance tour about how wouldn't it just be a beautiful thing if women step aside? Like, it's absolutely unreal.
I want to throw your attention to that clip right here.
How beautiful it is for women to maybe just step aside.
So, Lucas, what was your reaction to seeing Josh Hawley alongside Harrison Butker as he made those comments about women?
I mean, this is a confirmation of everything we know about Josh Hawley. I'm glad he's out there campaigning and letting people know what he really stands for. I mean, this is probably the worst U.S. senator on women's reproductive rights, which, I mean, it's kind of an accomplishment, right? When you consider some of the folks
saying something. Yeah,
it's insane. It's impressive, though. I mean, you know, when the IVF was banned in Alabama for a little bit, Josh Hawley, very cutting edge on that issue. He'd written an article in 2013 where he said that in vitro fertilization, the morning after pill, and any type of contraception that prevents the implantation of a fertilized egg is abortion. He's voted against for protections for pregnant workers. Gosh, I mean, the list is so long. He recently came out and said that we need to reconsider the wisdom of no-fault divorces, because I guess that he's tired of women getting out of unsafe and abusive marriages. It's just unreal. And so for them to be, you know, plotting their little bromance step aside tour, like, no surprise to me. I'm glad he's doing it. You know, we got abortion on the ballot here in the fall, and this is what Missourians need to know.
To watch the full interviews with Lucas and Will, click the thumbnails right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also click the link on the screen to listen to the audio version of this episode, and of course to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.